Have you ever looked at a situation and just wondered, why do people stay in relationships that are so clearly hurting them? Or how do these patterns of pain, of trauma, seem to echo down through a family from one generation to the next? Well, today, we're going to dig into the deep psychology behind these cycles. And, more importantly, we're going to talk about the very real, very hopeful ways to break them.
So here's our game plan. We'll start with the psychology of the trap itself, why it's so hard to leave. Then we'll get practical and learn how to spot the red flags. From there, we'll zoom out and see how the strain impacts the whole family. And this is a big one. We'll figure out the difference between actually supporting someone and accidentally enabling them. And finally, we'll look at a real path forward, how to break the cycle for good.
All right, let's dive right into our first section. Before we can even begin to talk about solutions, we absolutely have to understand the why. We need to grasp the powerful, often invisible, mental traps that can keep a person stuck.
From the outside looking in, this can be a completely baffling question. But the answer isn't about weakness or lack of intelligence. It's actually rooted in some pretty fundamental ways our brains are wired to make sense of our world, even when that world has become a really painful place to be.
We're going to focus on three big psychological concepts that can create a kind of cage. First up is something called cognitive dissonance. Then we've got the really sneaky power of a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's where our own low expectations can actually create the very behavior we're afraid of. And finally, we'll touch on those rigid, internalized should statements. The unspoken rules we live by that can lock us into some really harmful beliefs about who we are and what we deserve.
Okay, so let's break this one down because it's huge. Cognitive dissonance is basically your brain hating a contradiction. Imagine you believe two things at once. I am a good person who deserves respect, and your reality is I am being treated terribly. That conflict creates a ton of mental stress. And weirdly, it's often psychologically easier to change the belief, to start thinking, well, maybe I do deserve this, or it's my fault, than it is to change the difficult, painful reality. It's not a conscious choice. It's this powerful automatic drive to just make things make sense inside our own heads.
Okay, so we've touched on the internal why. Now let's shift to the external what. This next part is all about recognizing the signs you can actually see. The observable red flags that tell you something is really wrong, not just in a relationship, but in the kids who are living in that environment too.
Now, here's something that's absolutely critical to understand. Harmful behavior is very rarely a constant thing. It almost always follows this predictable four-stage cycle. You have the tension building, the incident, and then, stage 3, the reconciliation, the honeymoon phase. This is the hook. It's filled with apologies, with promises, with this powerful glimmer of hope that things will be different this time. And that hope makes it incredibly hard to leave before the calm fades and that tension starts to build all over again.
And look, it's not always about big, explosive outbursts. The red flags can be way more subtle. Things like intense jealousy that's disguised as caring or being protective, or controlling who you see, who you talk to, emotional manipulation, a sudden need for secrecy around their phone. These are all tactics. They're designed to assert power and really to isolate you.
Kids often show us they're hurting through their behavior, not their words. So you might see a kid who was once outgoing suddenly withdraw, or the complete opposite, they become uncharacteristically aggressive. A huge one is a sharp drop in school performance. And pay close attention to that last point, masking distress. Sometimes, the biggest warning sign is the child who is too good, too compliant. They're trying so hard to be invisible to not cause any more conflict.
This quote, wow, this is so important. We love to talk about how resilient kids are, but we have to be so careful with that word. Just because a child seems to be coping, seems to be okay on the surface, does not mean they aren't being deeply harmed. Their silence, their so-called resilience, is often a survival skill they've built to get through an unsafe world.
So now let's talk about that ripple effect. Because one person's harmful behavior never just stays between two people. It sends these shockwaves through the entire family system, and it puts everyone under an immense amount of strain.
The pressure on a partner in these situations is just crushing, and it comes from all sides. Of course, the emotional toll is massive. That's the biggest piece of the pie. But then you pile on the practical stuff. Suddenly, you're basically solo parenting, you're carrying a huge financial burden, and you're dealing with social stigma that can make you feel completely alone. It's exhausting. And for the kids growing up in this environment, the damage can go so deep.
What they're learning is that this kind of chaos, this kind of harm, is what relationships look like. This becomes their normal. And that can fundamentally warp their ability to trust people and to form their own healthy, secure attachments when they become adults. It's how the cycle gets passed on.
You know, extended family can be such a powerful force in these moments, either for good or for not so good. On one hand, they can be absolute pillars of support, providing stability, helping out, and just offering empathy without judgment. But on the other hand, they can become another source of conflict, creating family drama, expressing disapproval, or even blaming the victim, adding another layer of pain to an already impossible situation.
Okay, we have really analyzed the problem from a bunch of different angles. Now let's pivot to the how. How do we actually help? This section is so important because it's all about the massive difference between genuinely supporting someone and accidentally enabling their harmful behavior to continue.
This chart just lays it out so clearly. Enabling is when you make excuses. It's when you shield people from the natural consequences of their own actions. It's like building them a nice, comfortable ramp so they can just stay in the hole they've dug. Healthy support, on the other hand, fosters accountability. It gives them the tools and encouragement to climb out themselves. It is the huge difference between rescuing someone and actually empowering them.
And when you're trying to figure out if someone is truly changing, you have to be able to tell the difference between remorse and regret. This is critical. Regret is all about me, me, me. I'm sorry I got caught. I'm sorry I have to deal with these consequences. Remorse is about the other person. It's a deep, gut-level understanding of the pain you caused someone else. Real, lasting change can only ever be built on a foundation of genuine remorse. So, what does that healthy support actually look like in practice? Well, it really comes down to these 4 things. 1. You have to set and enforce clear, firm boundaries. 2. Foster accountability. Stop rescuing them from the consequences of their choices. 3. Encourage their autonomy. Help them find their own solutions, don't try to control them. And number 4, and listen, this one is absolutely non-negotiable. You have to prioritize your own mental and physical health. You cannot pour from an empty cup. It's just not possible. And all of this brings us to our final section, breaking the generational cycle. This is where we shift our focus completely to the path forward. We're talking about healing, about resilience, and about the very, very real possibility of creating a much healthier future.
I love this. This idea really gets to the heart of it. The goal isn't to erase the past or pretend it didn't happen. That's impossible. It's about processing it, learning what you need to learn from it, and then consciously, deliberately laying down new steps to make sure those old, worn-out patterns don't get to decide what your future looks like.
Getting professional help is so often a huge part of this journey, and there are some amazing tools out there. Therapies like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy can literally help you rewire those destructive thought patterns. DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, gives you practical skills to manage huge emotions. And for really deep trauma, something like EMDR can help your brain reprocess painful memories so they don't have that same emotional power over you anymore.
And when it comes to the next generation, we can be so proactive. We can equip them with the tools they need. It really starts with creating a safe, stable, predictable home. That's the foundation. From there, it's about teaching them that it's okay to feel all their feelings, helping them build a strong sense of who they are, separate from any family chaos. All of this gives them the healthy coping skills they'll need to thrive.
Let's end on this powerful idea. Resilience isn't something you're just born with or without. It's a skill, it's a strength, and it is built, often through overcoming really, really hard things. Your past does not have to be your future. It is always possible to forge a new path.
So we'll leave you with this final thought, this question to take with you. Breaking these huge, overwhelming cycles, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens with a single, courageous step. So, what is one conversation, just one, that you could start today to begin to change a pattern?